Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Just Daf It, Daf Yomi Shir. We're learning Maseches Nazir, Daf Chav Ches, number 28. We're almost halfway through Maseches Nazir. It's pretty good. We're going to start Chav Ches and Aleph, the top. The third line, Yachol. This is an ongoing brisa which talks about a couple of different things, but the reason this brisa is being brought is for part of the brisa we actually read yesterday on Chav Zayin Amud Beis, which talks about a person using either unspecified money or the karbanos that the father specified for his own nazirus, right? In certain instances, a son can become a nazir and use his father's karbanos, or the money he set aside for karbanos, to complete his own nazirus if his father died before completing his own nazirus. It depends whether the money was unspecified or whether it was actually designated as karbanos. The animals were designated as karbanos, or the money was specified. Let's read the conclusion of the brisa, and then we'll get back to the question that's relevant to our sugya. So let's continue the brisa. Yachol lo yetzi b'mol shehifresh afilu min akala al akala min chamura al chamura. Aval yotze b'korban shehifresh la'atzma min akala al chamura min chamura al akala. This again has nothing to do with Nazirus. It has to do with a person bringing korban chatas, right? So we said also a person bringing korban chatas, he can't, if he designated an animal for a certain chatas, let's say violating Melech Shabbos, he can't use that korban now for a different sin that he has, for eating, let's say, dam, or eating chalev. So you might think he can't do it. Money he set aside for kala ala kala, right? For example, chalev, and he wanted to use it for dam, which is the same severity, or min chamura al chamura for Shabbos and avodah zarah. Switch from Shabbos to avodah zarah. Again, if you violate a Shabbos b'shogeg or avodah zarah b'shogeg, they're more severe than dam and chalev, because if you did it on purpose, b'mezid, you'd be chayav skila or kares by Shabbos and avodah zarah, which is not true by chalev and dam. Well, I mean, you'd be chayav kares, but you wouldn't be chayav Mises based in, which is only by Shabbos and Avodah Zarah. So that's by money. Aval yotze b'korban shehifresh la'atzma min akala chamura min chamura al akala. But if he designated already an animal, he said, "This is my korban chatas for Melech Shabbos," and then he decides to bring it for eating dam or eating chalev, or the opposite, vice versa. Talmud lomar karbano al chato. There's a different pasuk in Vayikra, parshas of Vayikra. The korban has to be the exact sin that he did. Yachol lo yetzi b'behema shehifresh la'atzmo min akala al akala min chamura al chamura, or afilu min akala al chamura min chamura al akala. Shkein im hifresh behema al chalev behevi al adam, or adam behevi al chalev shari lo mal v'lo kiper. So you might think this only applies to an animal. An animal set aside, let's say, for dam, and he wants to use it for chalev, which are equal, or dam, and he wants it for Shabbos, which are not equal, or vice versa. Any of these cases, he wants to switch, right? And there's a svara that, right, he can't switch. What's the svara he can't switch? Shekin im hifresh behem al chalev behevi al dam, or al dam behevi al chalev shari lo mal. Right? If you have an animal designated for the sin of eating blood, and then you gave it for the sin of eating chalev, right? The animal was already kodesh kadashim, kodshei was a chatas, and now you switched it for a different sin. So you didn't do me'ilah. Me'ilah means you have to take the animal and remove it from its consecration, and you didn't do that. You just switched it from kodshei for one sin to kodshei for another sin. Me'ilah is when you render it, you take the kedusha out of it, you use it for chulin. Below keeper, it's not kapar. We learned before you can't use a kapar. Well, yotze, how about money? Let's say you set aside money to bring a korban chatas for dam, and you want to use it for nevela, for chalev, or min chamura lakala, min akala lechamura. You want to use, you had it for Shabbos, you want to use it for chalev, or chalev you want to use it for Shabbos. Shekein hifresh la'atzma most min chalev behevi al dam behevi al chalev sharei mal the keeper. In that case, if you set aside money for dam, and you took the money and instead used it to purchase a chatas for chalev, right, you would violate me'ilah, because it's different. The money is different than the animal. The animal, you're just changing the animal, is kodshei, now it's still kodshei. And the money you used to buy, it was set aside for dam, and now you're using it for chalev, right? So the money, when you buy the animal for Chela, the money goes to Chulin. The money goes to Chulin. The animal gets the Kedusha. So there is an aspect of Me'ila over there. Talmud Lomar al Chato Achi Hey Karbano L'Shem Chato. A different pasuk later on by Yikra al Chataso on his Chatas. That the second time repeating this is that nonetheless, even though there was Me'ila, there was some transference of kedusha. The money was nischalal. It lost its kedusha. It has to be nonetheless a carbon l'shem chato. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the brisa. The brisa included a lot of different cases, but the question comes from Chavzan Amud Beis. We're talking about the Naziros. Kasani mias behema. The beginning of the brisa from yesterday it says behema, right? It depends. If the father set aside money, unspecified money, for his Naziros, and then the son came along and said. And then the father died, and the son came along and said, after his father died, I am becoming Nazir, and I'm going to use my father's unspecified money for karbanos, the end of my Naziros. It works in that case, right? However, if it's a behema, right, his father had a behema, then it doesn't work. Telling me this behema, my love, says any animal, even if it has a mum, right, which a permanent mum, which can't be used as a karban, it's still, nonetheless, you're not allowed to use it. It has to be golamisa. The Gemara says, lo, tamima. No, when the Brisa said really it's only talking about an animal without a blemish. So the Gemara says, if the animal has a permanent blemish, is like unspecified money. My year the kani mos. Why does it say the case where it's okay to use your father's money? Mos shehir for Shabbos. Listening balasam. Say the bigger chiddush, even if it's an animal, but the animal got a mum, right? It's like mos stumin, right? And the son could use it to megaleach, to use it for his completion of his naziros. So whereas hakanami, it's the same thing. Right? That's why it says money. It includes obviously an animal with a balance. An animal with a permanent blemish. What is it fit for? Chazia ladami. You have to sell it, right? It's purely amadash. You have to sell it, redeem it. Dami hainu mos. Dami, money. Kedusha's damim is basically value. It's the equivalent of money. So by saying money, it basically included a behema that has a permanent blemish, and therefore presumably the halach would be it's like stuma, and therefore you could use it to sell it and bring karbonos for your own naziros. Mishnah says, "Nizrak aleha echad min hadamim and yachal lahafer." We said it in the previous Mishnah on Daf Chav Daled that a husband could be made for his wife's naziros. Until what point? Right? Let's say she completes 30 days of naziros, and they have 3 animals to shecht, chatas, ola, and shlamim. They shechted the animals, and one of the animals' blood was thrown on his beach. At that point, once one of the bloods are thrown on his beach, the husband can no longer be mefer, because presumably the naziros is over. Technically, the kapara has been achieved. We're going to learn that according to the Mishnah on Daf Mem, hey, once you bring one of the karbanos, and bringing a karban is right. When is it hortza? When is it the kapara achieved? When you throw the blood on his beach, even bringing one of them, right? Hortza. He says even you slaughtered one of the animals, even though you didn't slaughter all of them, and even though you didn't throw any of the blood on the mizbeach, you can't be made for. We'll see why Rabbi Akiva holds in the Gemara. So the Mishnah says, where are Tanakama and Rabbi Akiva talking about? When she finished her naziros, she completed naziros betara. She didn't become tmeya. However, if she became tmeya, now she's bringing karbanos. She brings a karban asham, a karban ola, and a karban shlamim, right? And she has to shave her head and then start a new 30-day period of naziros, or whatever, how long the period of naziros she was makabel upon herself. Yafer, he could be mefer. She yachal lomar. He could say, if she be'isha menuvelas, right? Because she's continuing her naziros, she's going to be abstaining from wine. And that's the reason the husband is allowed to be mefer. A husband can only mefer things that either beino lebeina affect the relationship, or there's something which are inoi nefesh, and inoi nefesh, things which she causes pain to herself. Not being able to drink alcohol is a form of causing pain to herself. So he doesn't want to live with a woman who is in a state of pain. It's not fun to be in a marriage, a woman who's causing pain to herself. So therefore, since she's still abstaining from wine, she has to start counting in naziros. Even if she already got a haircut, you have to cut your hair also when you become tmeya. Even if all the animals were shechted and all the blood was thrown in his back, he could still be mefer. He could be made for the naziros and stop it, because you could say, I don't want to have a wife who is bald. She's going to be bald, right? Talk about Hasidim, some Hasidus, advocate for the woman to shave their head. I don't know exactly what percentage of Hasidish women shave their head. I really am curious to know. In fact, I was an MC at a Sheva Brachos with my sister-in-law, and as an MC, you make a lot of jokes. So at one point during the day meal, I mentioned something that my sister-in-law and me had an argument about how many Hasidish, what percentage of Hasidish ladies shave their head. She felt it was closer to 70%. I said 30%. No, she said 30%. I said 70%. I said I believe 70% of Hasidish women shave their head. She said no way. And there was a Hasidish lady in the room or something like that. So I made some joke about that. Me and my sister-in-law arguing about this, and people were shocked. It was the wrong crowd to say it in front of. Say a joke like that in front of ultra-Orthodox people, especially when there's Hasidim mixed in there. I went a little overboard. It's my first time really being an MC. The rest of it was hilarious, but at that point, people would cringe at that point. So, so a man, right? A man could say, or a mayor, it could say, I don't want my wife to be bald, right? Most men do not appreciate a woman as bald, unless the goal of the woman shaving a woman's head is not like they say in the Sfarim that there shouldn't be a chatzitza in the mikvah. The reason they shave their head is that they shouldn't be attracted to their wife and shouldn't have too much taiva in their relationships with their marriage. That's, I believe, the reason that the Hasidim shave their head, even though they won't tell you that it's the reason. Listen to my lectures on living marriage, where we just talk about the real Yetzer Hara in the bedroom. Is the Yetzer Hara taiva, or is the Yetzer Hara telling you, make sure not to enjoy this as much as possible? So you could say, I don't want to eat Isham Galachas. You could stop the Nazir at that point, even though she got kapara, right? And once you throw the dam, right, she's allowed to drink wine, but still you have to proceed and shave her head. So you can stop it and say, I don't want her to shave her head. I can't live with a woman who's migulachas, and that's maybe dvarim shebeino lebeina, which she has the ability to make for. It affects her marriage. And where it says masnisin, the lo kirabelezer. Our Mishnah is not like Relezer. Relezer amar tigalachas ma'akeves. According to Relezer, he says, our Mishnah says, once you throw the blood. According to Relezer, no, you have to actually shave the head. Until you shave the head, she's still asura to drink wine, and therefore, of course, you could be mefer before, even after the blood is thrown. Came with the lo gilcha asira b'chamer. She's also drink wine. Came in the Islam evil, right? She's causing inui nefesh to herself. She's causing pain to herself by still abstaining from wine. Matzi mefer. He could be mefer. Now the Gemara explains the machlokes between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Akiva now. Tana Didan, there's actually parentheses on the bottom at the end of Chavchamanal. This is what Tana Kama and Rabbi Akiva argue about. Chavchedam and Beis. Tana Didan Savar came on this Darik allowed Dam Alter Shari Bechamra. Right? Tana Kama holds once they throw the blood of one of the animals, right? She becomes muteris to drink wine. The husband can no longer be made for the Naziris. Rabbi Akiva Savar afilu ishtachit behema. Even once the first animal is slaughtered, any yachal hafer. Not that Rabbi Akiva disagrees and says that she can drink wine. She can't drink wine until she gets kapara, and that needs rikas adam, need throwing of the blood on the mizbeach. Mishum hefsek kashmin. It's derabbanan, Rabbi Akiva says, because once one of the animals is shechted, right, you wasted the animal. It was kashim, right? And now, once you made for the Naziris, you can't throw the blood on the mizbeach anymore. You lost the korban. You lost the korban. Derabbanan, anywhere goes there, you can't be mefer. If he's mefer, would it work or not? That's a machlokas. An art school brings a couple of different opinions whether it would work or not. Do we say that the Rabbanan were ma'aker, were oker davar min Torah, b'shei baltasa, or not? The Rabbanan removed the concept from the Torah that even if he was made for it wouldn't work, or maybe it would work with the Eved. That's a machlokas. Maskiv la Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera asked the following question: Ma'amai lizrok damar. Ma'amai, why should it be, according to Akiva, that you lost the kashim? Lizrok damar shelo lishman. Right? Even after he's made for the Naziros, you can throw the blood, right, on the Mizbeach. V'yatir basar b'achlila, and you can technically eat the basar. As long as it's a korban, you can eat the basar. Like a korban chatas or a korban shlamim. Milo tanya, kivsei adzeres. Right? We have a brisa when it comes to Shavuos. Shavuos, you bring 2 lambs for a shlamim, along with the shtei halechem, 2 loaves of bread, 2 lambs, a special korban you bring on Shavuos. So kivsei shachtan shelo lishman. You shafted it with the wrong intentions. You shafted l'shem ola. It's a korban shlam. You shafted l'shem ola. Oh, you shafted l'fnei zman, or you shafted it before Shavuos, or la'achar zman, or after Shavuos. Adami zari. The blood, nonetheless, even though the korban is possible, right? Hadami zari, you can throw the blood on his be'ach, but basar yachal. It nonetheless is matir to eat the blood because it's the korban. It's just you're in yotzi the chova the obligation of the Kivsei Atzeres. V'im Haisa Shabbos, if it's Shabbos, meaning Shavuos fell on Shabbos, lo yizarik, then you shouldn't throw them in the bottom of his back, because it's like separating Shumas and Maishas, Shumasakin, Midarabanan, you can't fix it. So by throwing the blood, you'll be allowing yourself to eat the basar. So therefore, Midarabanan, there goes, you can't throw the blood on Shabbos. V'im Zarak, if he did, but he went against the Rabbanan, Horsa, Lahafter more in the Erev, then the korban is a valid korban. And you can't burn the korban on Shabbos, because Shabbos you can only burn korbanos that are korbanos that are kosher, like Tamidin on kosher on Shabbos, but korbanos which are not kosher, because it's a kivsei atzeres that are not all of the shem chova. So therefore you burn the korban on Motzei Shabbos, the Erev. So you see what? It's not hefsed kachim. You're not losing the kachim because you can eat the meat. So the Gemara says, "I'm gonna either shachad olo shlamim." If we actually were talking about the korban olo shlamim, right? It's 3 korbanos at the end of the Nazir. So olo shlamim and chatas. Hakanami. You're right. It's true. El hachamayaskin. What is Rabbi Akiva talking about? Shachad chatas bereisha. When first you shechted the korban chatas, that's where he says, in that case you can't be mefer. Otherwise you could be mefer. There's no hefsed kosher. Because it's not like we learned in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Hey. If you, right, you shaved your head at the end of your Nazirus, after you only brought one of the korbanos, means bringing the korban means throwing the blood on his back. You shafted and brought one of the korbanos, right? You're yotzei, and that could even be the beginning of the Mishnah happens to say that the first korban technically is supposed to be the chatas. So you bring the korban chatas. So, and the korban chatas is unique because the korban chatas, if you're makrivish shalol l'shema, then you can't throw the blood on the mizbeach, and you can't eat the meat over there. But the korban chatas, if it's not done l'shem chatas, it's invalid, because the whole purpose of a chatas is for kapara, and its whole value as kodshim is for the kapara. And if you're not getting the kapara because you did it wrong, you did it l'shem shlamim, l'shem ola, or the wrong time, so it's not a korban at all. You can then there's really hefsed kodshim. That's what Ricky was talking about by korban chatas. So the Gemara continues to explain the machlokas at the end of the Mishnah. Meir says even after the blood is thrown, before she shaves her head at the end of her Nazirus, he can be mefer. I don't want a woman who's unattractive to me. Tanakama will say to you, why did he say the same as Meir? Right? You can't say the woman's unattractive to me because she can wear a wig. She can wear a sheitel. They have beautiful sheitels in these days. Remeir Savar. Remeir holds no. Right? A woman who has hair and she wears a wig on top of her hair, it's not disgusting. But if you have a bald head, and your bald head probably sweats more than a person with regular hair, so that's going to make the sheitel smell pretty bad. So therefore, he has the right to demand, I don't want you to shave your head, because even wearing a wig, even wearing a sheitel is not going to be good enough for me. That is the conclusion of this Gemara. Let's go to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Aish Madir is Beno Benazir. Aisha Madir is Beno Benazir. A man can accept a Nazirus for his son. We'll see in the coming daf how he does it. He can say, my son should be a Nazir, or, well, there's different ways of doing it. The classical way, he says, I want my son to be a Nazir, right? And they're talking about a son who's before bar mitzvah. But once he's bar mitzvah, he can't do it. Our mother can't do that to her son. Right? How does this work out? So if the son, let's say he's 9-year-old or something, under 13, he decides he's not happy that his father took his zeros upon himself, and he goes and shaves his head. You're not allowed to shave your head as part of the zeros. He goes and he shaves his head, right? Or the relatives, his uncles, come and shave his head. No one actually shaved the head. It wasn't such a public display of disapproval. Rather, they complained about it. They protested, right? Civil disobedience. They protested outside the person's house. We will no longer go on with one of our nephews being a Nazir. So either the child is mocha, he protests, or the krover are mocha, right? So that abrogates the Nazirus. As long as they protest or they shave their head and show that they protest, it abrogates the Nazirus. Just like a husband can be made for the Nazirus, or a person who's Nazir and died. A similar thing, and the similar halacha, like we learned this Mishnah before. So therefore, what? He already set aside an animal. When he accepted Nazirus for his son, the father is responsible to pay for the korbanos. So when he said, my son is a Nazir, he set aside an animal, explicit animal. And well, this is for chatas, this is for all, this is for shlam. A chatas tamas, so they already set aside a chatas has to die. The ola dekarav ola shlam yikruv shlam. The ola is brought as a common ola. I discussed previously, I believe it's a chiyuv. And shlam yikruv shlamim. Article says shalmin adava or ola adava. And achalin yom echad, they're eating for one day because that's the shlamim of a nazir is only eating for one day. Ve'ein atunin lechem. They don't need bread because there's going to be no completion of the service to wave the bread. Hayulo mo stumin. However, let's say the father set aside unspecified money for the karbanos. Yipul nadava. Then the halacha mashusina applies, and they're used for ketzim and zbeach, right? Most mifurashim. However, if the money is specified, this money is for chatas, this is for all shalom dmei chatas. Since they're already specified, so there's no halacha mashusina, and therefore the ones that are chatas, you can't benefit from. You can't use them and all. Throw them into the Dead Sea. Lo nenin v'lo molin. There's no me'ila and there's no hana. You can't benefit from it. That's why you throw in the yamnal. Dmei ola. Yaviu ola. Dmei ola, you should bring it ola. Molin behead. There's me'ila because kachim have me'ila. Dmei shlam yaviu shlamim v'nechal niyamecha v'enatun lechem. Like we learned before about all the two previous cases, someone dying or the husband made from the Naziris. Here also, the money for the shlamim you bring a shlamim, and the money for the ola you bring an ola, and the shlamim are eaten for one day. They don't need bread because again there's no completion of the Naziris, therefore there's no waving of the bread, and therefore you don't have to bring the bread with the shlamim. We discussed previously in Enoch Ben Sion whether I believe in this case the shlamim is shalmei chova or the Naziris is still intact partially or not. The Naziris is not partially intact. We'll talk more about this. The Naziris of our father making a Naziris for his son, whether the Naziris is partially intact or is completely abrogated in the days coming. Interesting sugyas to come in the next couple of days. Hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned for Enoch Ben Sion, where I start talking about one of the ends of the Naziris. When you shave your head both times. If you're complete your Naziris, the Tara, right? You bring the 3 karbanos and you shave your head. Also, if you violate your Naziris before it's over and you become Tameh from Tumas Hames, you have to actually go ahead and bring 3 karbanos also. Instead of bringing Asham and Shlamim and Ola. And also, you have to bring Asham and Chatas and Ola, I'm not sure. And also, you have to shave your head again in both cases. Is there a difference between the two shaving of their heads? I think there is, and we'll talk more about it. Enoch Ben Sion coming up next.